I was 30 when my world cracked in half. The doctor's office smelled like disinfectant and fake citrus. The kind that tries too hard to be comforting but ends up making you more nauseous. I sat there, still in my work clothes, dust on my boots, sunburn peeling on my neck, while the man in the white coat looked at me with rehearsed sympathy. "Mason," he said, folding his hands over the manila folder that held the truth of my body, "you're likely infertile. Low motility. Very slim chances." I stared at him for a beat too long. My throat went dry. I didn't ask him to repeat it. I heard it the first time, loud and clear, like a bomb going off in the middle of my chest. I don't remember driving home. I remember the tightness in my chest. I remember the ache in my hands from gripping the steering wheel. I remember thinking, how do I tell Clara? She had always wanted kids. Not in the cute, Pinterest board way. No, she'd named them. Had nursery themes in mind. Had timelines. First one by 32, she used to say, tracing lines in the steam on our bathroom mirror. 2 by 35, then we're done. Perfect family. When I walked through the door that evening, she was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. The scent of garlic and rosemary drifted in the air. She turned and smiled until she saw my face. That smile faded like a setting sun. "What happened?" she asked, eyes narrowing. I sat at the kitchen table and told her. Every word cut me, but I said them anyway. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, stirring, her shoulders stiffening with each word. At first, she tried. I'll give her that. She did the Googling. Scheduled the consultations. Bought supplements. Said things like, science is amazing now. There are options. But the warmth was already fading. The way she looked at me shifted, no longer with love, but calculation. Like I was an investment that wasn't going to yield returns. It wasn't long before Raymond started showing up more. My best friend. Or at least, that's what I used to call him. He came by with excuses. Just checking in on you too. Thought I'd bring over that bottle of red you like. You guys need to get out more. He made Clara laugh. Loud, open-mouthed laughs I hadn't heard from her in months. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was insecure and overthinking. But deep down, something was unraveling. Something primal. I started staying late at work. Anything to avoid the three of us in the same room. Then one Thursday, I came home early. There was music playing. Laughter floating through the walls. I walked into the kitchen and saw them, Clara and Raymond, sitting close, 2 glasses of wine between them, her hand resting just a bit too long on his arm. Their eyes widened when they saw me. Clara's hand jerked away like she'd touched fire. Raymond stood up too fast, knocking over the wine bottle. Mason, she said. Just my name. Not hey, or you're home early, or this isn't what it looks like. Just Mason. Like that was explanation enough. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a punch. I just nodded once, walked to the hallway, and closed the bedroom door behind me. I didn't sleep that night. A month later, she packed her bags. No big fight. No dramatic scene. Just a cold, final conversation in the living room. You'll never be enough for me, she said. Her voice didn't tremble. Mine did. I wanted to ask why she didn't just say it sooner. Why she made me hope. Why she let me feel like I was still her husband when she'd already left in every way that counted. Instead, I just watched her walk out the door. Raymond was waiting outside, leaning against his car, sunglasses on despite the gray sky. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. I sat alone in that quiet house, surrounded by things we chose together. The couch we argued over in the showroom. The dishes we got from our wedding registry. The framed ultrasound appointment card she once hung on the fridge like a prophecy. It all mocked me now. It wasn't just about being infertile. It was the way that truth had peeled back everything I thought was real, my marriage, my friendship, my worth. I thought that diagnosis had broken me. But looking back now, I realize it didn't. It just revealed the cracks that were already there. And the people who were willing to walk away the moment they realized I wasn't who they needed me to be. The divorce was less a process and more a public crucifixion. I didn't think Clara could surprise me after what she did. But she found a way. In the courtroom, under the humming fluorescent lights, in the cold stare of a judge who clearly didn't want to be there, she sat beside Raymond like they were already married. Her hand rested on his knee like I'd never existed. I didn't bring anyone. I didn't even want my lawyer, but I knew better than to show up to war unarmed. He's sterile, Clara said to the court, her voice sweet but sharp enough to cut glass. I want a real family. There it was. No pretense. No grace. Just a dagger to the chest in the middle of a legal proceeding. I could feel the room shift. The clerk looked down awkwardly. The bailiff raised an eyebrow. Even the judge flinched, just barely. I didn't defend myself. I didn't speak a word. I sat there and signed every damn paper they put in front of me. Division of assets? She could have it. The house? Hers. The car? Take it. Every piece of the life I built, I handed it over like it was on clearance. Because the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. None of it did. Raymond didn't speak once during the proceedings. He didn't need to. His presence said enough. That smug little smile on his face, the way he rubbed Clara's shoulder like a trophy he'd finally earned, it all screamed one thing. I won. They moved into the house I picked out. The one with the wraparound porch and the maple tree in the yard that Clara swore would be perfect for a tire swing someday. I used to drive by it sometimes, before I realized how much it hurt. Once, I saw them on that porch. She was pregnant, belly round, sunlight catching on her hair as Raymond handed her a lemonade. It felt like the universe had joined in on the joke. A year later, their son Leo was born, and Clara made sure the whole town knew. She didn't send a private message. No, she posted it. Tagged people. So grateful for a real man, the caption said, paired with a photo of Raymond holding their newborn like a prize. A real father. A real future. I stared at the screen for a long time before deleting everything. Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. I wiped it all. Erased my digital existence like it might somehow erase the ache in my chest. I sold my phone. Got a new number. Left the group chats I'd once laughed in. People asked questions. I ignored them. I disappeared. I packed what was left of my life into 2 duffel bags and a toolbox. I took my old truck and drove. No map, no destination, just out. Out of the city, out of the noise, out of the suffocating shadow of what used to be. I didn't want to be seen. Not by anyone who had known me during that chapter. The worst part wasn't losing Clara. It wasn't even the betrayal with Raymond. It was the humiliation. The look people gave me like they pitied me. The whispers. The way former friends picked sides, or worse, stayed quiet. The betrayal was sharp, but the humiliation was dull and constant. Like a stone in my shoe that I couldn't shake loose. One day, I walked into a coffee shop for a drink, something simple, anything normal. And there she was, Clara, sitting with 2 of her friends, holding baby Leo in her arms. They didn't see me right away. She was laughing. Giddy. Perfect. And then one of them asked, "So how's Mason handling it?" Clara shrugged. He disappeared. Like I expected. He was always quiet. Just didn't have the fight in him. They laughed. And I stood there, invisible. Coffee order forgotten. Pride shredded. That was the day I stopped looking back. I drove until I found a town with no chain stores and no billboards. A coastal place where people wore boots because they worked, not because it was trendy. Hillmere. It was quiet. Humble. Forgettable. Just what I needed. I rented a small place by the water, 2 rooms, thin walls, old pipes. I got a job with a local construction crew. Started as a grunt. Didn't care. I worked 12-hour days, came home covered in sweat and sawdust, and fell asleep to the sound of waves crashing just beyond the dunes. I didn't date. Didn't mingle. If someone asked about my past, I changed the subject. I wasn't Mason from the city anymore. I wasn't the sterile husband or the failed man. I was just Mason. Just a guy who worked hard and kept to himself. I buried the humiliation in silence. I stopped trying to explain myself. People in Hillmere didn't ask many questions, and I didn't offer any answers. And somehow, in that solitude, I began to heal. Hillmere never asked me to explain myself, and maybe that was its greatest mercy. The town was quiet in the kind of way that healed you slowly, like salt water and sun. There were no crowded intersections or endless chatter. Just the rhythm of waves, the groan of old wood docks, and people who valued a solid day's work over clever conversation. That suited me just fine. I started as a day laborer on a housing development project. Nothing glamorous, digging foundations, framing walls, hauling lumber. But the work was honest. My foreman, Pete, had a raspy voice and a bad knee, but he was fair. Didn't care where you came from so long as you showed up early and didn't slack off. I did both. Every damn day. They didn't know I used to manage multi-million-dollar construction contracts in the city. That I once had a corner office and health benefits and a company credit card. In Hillmere, I was just Mason, the guy with calloused hands and quiet eyes. I let it stay that way. The place I rented was small, a weathered cabin just off the dunes. The kind of place you'd call charming if you were in love. To me, it was just enough. The floor creaked when I walked. The heater coughed more than it warned. But it had a porch, and on weekends, I'd sit out there with a cold beer and watch the waves. That was the first thing I started doing again, watching. Taking in the world without the noise of my past buzzing in my ears. I didn't fill the silence with distractions. I let it soak in. I learned to cook simple meals. I learned to fix the old pipes in the kitchen. I started reading again books about carpentry, philosophy, and sometimes just cheap detective novels. Nothing too heavy. Months passed that way. Quiet, slow, steady. And then one morning, I met Sophia. I'd cut my hand on a rusty nail at the job site, nothing dramatic, but deep enough to need stitches. Pete insisted I go to the clinic, said he wasn't losing a good worker over a stupid infection. So I grumbled and walked into Hillmere Community Health Center with a towel wrapped around my hand and an attitude. She was the nurse on duty. Sophia had sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that saw too much, and a voice that didn't flinch. She didn't smile much at first, just raised an eyebrow when I tried to play it down. "You're bleeding through the towel," she said flatly. "Sit down." I obeyed. Something about her tone reminded me of who I used to be, the guy who didn't take crap from anyone, but respected competence when he saw it. She stitched me up without small talk. Just efficient, focused care. I appreciated that. Before I left, she handed me antibiotics and a note with her number on it, strictly for follow-up, she said. I didn't call her right away. I wasn't ready for anything more than silence. But I ran into her again 2 weeks later at the grocery store. She was standing in the produce aisle, inspecting avocados like her life depended on it. I made some comment about her intensity, and she surprised me with a dry smile. "You're the guy who bleeds too much and talks too little," she said. "Guilty," I replied. We ended up walking the aisles together. It wasn't a date. It wasn't anything. But when we both reached for the same brand of cereal and laughed, something cracked open inside me. We started talking. Slowly, over time. First in passing, then over coffee. Then dinners. She wasn't nosy. She never asked what I'd been through, never pried into the scars I kept hidden. She let me be. Let me rebuild on my own terms. And in that space, I started to trust again. She lived in a small apartment over the bookstore where she volunteered on weekends. Sophia was kind, but never soft. She believed in order, in compassion, in clean kitchens and rainy day jazz playlists. I liked the way she never apologized for who she was. I didn't tell her about Clara. Not at first. Not even for months. It wasn't shame. It was preservation. I didn't want her to see me through the lens of betrayal. I wanted to be Mason, not the ex-husband of a woman who left him for his best friend. But one night, after dinner, she looked at me across her small dining table, chin resting on her hand, and said, "You've got that look again. Like someone's chasing you." I sighed. Nobody's chasing me. I just haven't stopped running. And just like that, I told her everything. She didn't flinch. Didn't pity me. Just reached across the table and touched my fingers. "You're here now," she said. "That's what matters." And somehow, I believed her. The day Sophia told me she was pregnant, I laughed. Not because I was happy. Not because it was funny. But because my brain couldn't compute it. It just short-circuited, and laughter was the only thing that came out. We were in the kitchen. Sunday morning. She was standing by the counter in one of my old t-shirts, barefoot, cradling a mug of mint tea like it was armor. She didn't smile when she said it. Her voice was calm, almost scientific. I took 3 tests. All positive. I blinked, then laughed. Loud, nervous, bewildered laughter. "That's... Sophia, that's not possible." She didn't laugh with me. Her gaze didn't budge. "Well, either I'm having a religious experience, or you need to make peace with being an exception." My heart stalled in my chest. "I'm infertile," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "Low motility. The doctor said the chances were very slim, right?" She cut in, not unkindly. "You've told me. Twice. But here's the thing. I'm pregnant. And unless we need to have a very awkward conversation, it's yours." I sat down hard at the table. My hands felt numb. My thoughts were a spinning carousel of disbelief. I didn't ask if she was sure. I didn't insult her with doubt. But I did say the only words I could manage. "We should see a doctor." 3 doctors, actually. Hillmere's clinic. Then the OB in the next town over. Then a fertility specialist all the way in Greenbridge. I needed the facts. Needed to hear it from people who didn't know my history. People who could look me in the eye and say, "Yes, this is yours." And every time, they did. His DNA matches. "This is your child, Mr. Hart. 1 in a million? Sure. But biology isn't absolute. It happens. I've seen stranger things, the OB said with a smile. Science explains a lot, but it doesn't predict everything. Sophia was calm through it all. She never once doubted it. She didn't throw it in my face or call it a miracle. She let me go through the process, never pushing, just steady beside me. She was the anchor I didn't know I'd needed. When the first ultrasound image appeared on the screen, a tiny blur of life with a flickering heartbeat, I lost whatever walls I had left. I cried. Right there in the sterile room with the gel still on her belly and the nurse clicking buttons on the monitor. Sophia reached for my hand without saying a word, and we just stared at the screen together. The months passed in slow, warm waves. We moved in together. It was natural, like two rivers merging. No declarations. Just toothbrushes doubling, drawers mixing, our rhythms syncing like they'd been rehearsing in secret all along. She picked out soft, neutral colors for the nursery. Nothing over the top, just calm and warm. I built the crib with my own hands, sanding the edges, making sure every joint was tight. It mattered to me that he would sleep in something I made, because somehow this boy had chosen me. In spite of science, in spite of all my fears. He was coming into the world through love, not apology. Sophia let me name him. Said it should be mine to give. Aiden, I told her one evening, as we sat on the porch with her belly round beneath her sweater. It means little fire. That feels right. When the day came, it was raining. Of course it was. I drove her to the hospital on slick roads, clutching the steering wheel like it might fly out of my hands. She kept cracking dry jokes between contractions, calming me more than I calmed her. It was long. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. And then it was over. They handed him to me wrapped in a hospital blanket, his face wrinkled and red, his eyes barely opening. My arm shook as I took him. I expected joy, relief, maybe fear. But what I felt was claiming. Not ownership, not possession. Just this raw, thunderous certainty. He is mine. Mine, not because of biology or luck. Mine, because I had survived the kind of loneliness that almost hollowed me out, and I still chose to open myself to love again. I sat in the quiet of that hospital room, Aiden against my chest, and cried. The kind of tears that come from somewhere deeper than grief or happiness. The kind that only arrive when your soul exhales for the first time in years. Sophia slept beside me, exhausted but peaceful, and I held our son and whispered promises he couldn't yet understand. I would never abandon him. I would never make him feel like a mistake. He would never question whether he was wanted. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't redemption. It was a beginning. 10 years passed like water smoothing out a stone. Life became rhythm, routine, grace and motion. Aiden grew faster than I was ready for. 8 years old and already building circuits out of spare toaster parts, reading books way above his grade level, asking me questions like, Dad, do black holes feel lonely? And how do you know if a memory is real? I never had to force pride. It poured out of me. Every time I picked him up from school and he ran to me with that wide grin. Every time he woke me up on Saturday mornings, hair messy, voice eager to show me something he built or drew. Every time I watched him and Sophia, my anchor, my constant, sitting together on the couch, heads tilted the same way, hearts cut from the same cloth. We lived quietly, peacefully. We didn't post our lives online. We didn't chase applause. We didn't need to. Then came the science fair. Hillmere Elementary hosted it every spring, tables lined up in the gym, paper trifold boards, balloons, judges with clipboards. Sophia had volunteered to help set up. I took the day off and helped Aiden carry in his project, a scaled-down solar grid with a functional power switchboard. He even added a recycled water filter, because sustainable solutions should be layered. Dad. He wore his good shirt, buttoned all the way to the top, and his favorite mismatched socks because they helped me think better. I stood near the back, arms crossed, watching him explain every piece of his work to the judges with the clarity of a tiny engineer and the charm of a kid who didn't yet know the world could be cruel. And then I heard it, a laugh I'd trained myself to forget. Bright, high, sharp as cut glass. Clara. I froze. That sound alone knocked the air out of me, like hearing a ghost sneeze. I turned slowly, heart suddenly loud in my chest, and there she was, standing at the far end of the gym, wearing some pale designer coat that made her look like she'd stepped out of a catalog. Her blonde hair was styled to perfection, her heels too high for an elementary school event, and on her arm was a boy. Leo. Even from across the gym, I recognized him. He was taller than Aiden, broad-shouldered like Raymond, dressed in a perfectly ironed button-down, sleeves rolled at just the right angle. He had Clara's chin and a face molded to look like success. And beside them, looking tired and puffier than I remembered, was Raymond. His hair was thinning. His face was fuller. His arm hung loosely around Clara's waist like habit, not affection. I could have walked away. Should have. But fate didn't grant me that out. Aiden's project was being announced. The speaker tapped the mic. Our Innovator of the Year award goes to Aiden Hart for his hybrid solar water purification system. The crowd clapped. Sophia beamed beside me. And Aiden, my beautiful, brilliant son, walked up with his shy smile and accepted the ribbon with a tiny, awkward bow. Clara turned. Her eyes met mine. She smiled that smirk I remembered too well. The kind she used when she thought she'd already won. She leaned over to Raymond and whispered something. Then she walked over to me. Loud enough for those nearby to hear, she said. Still single, Mason? I didn't blink. Still bitter, Clara? Her smirk didn't waver. This is Leo, she said, motioning toward the boy now examining a papier-mâché volcano nearby. Top of his class. Chess champion. Takes after his real dad. It was a performance. One she wanted witnessed. She wanted the crowd to remember her as the winner. So I just nodded. That's nice, I said. Here's my son. And I gestured to the stage, where Aiden had just stepped up to the mic. He cleared his throat, eyes bright and voice clear. Thank you for this award. I just want to thank my mom and dad for believing in me, for letting me use all the outlets in the house, and for showing me how science isn't just tools and numbers, it's how you care for the world. Clara's face froze. Her lips parted slightly, like the air had gone dry in her mouth. Aiden finished his speech and bowed again. The gym erupted in applause. I didn't look at Clara again. I didn't need to. Raymond stared at Aiden like he was watching something impossible, like he couldn't make the pieces fit. And I just stood there, letting the silence between us stretch and say everything I didn't. My son had spoken for me. I'd always wondered how I'd feel in the moment when my past finally collided with my present. Turns out, it felt like stillness. Not anger, not revenge. Just a quiet knowing that time had done what I never could, exposed the truth, let it breathe, and left it standing there, embarrassed under fluorescent lights. After the science fair ended, most of the crowd filtered out with chatter and congratulations. Aiden was swarmed for a few minutes, his classmates tossing compliments like confetti, a few parents asking polite questions about how he built the whole thing without help. He answered them all, as he always did, with a sweet blend of humility and precision. Sophia stood next to me, beaming with pride. She gave my arm a gentle squeeze and whispered, "You did good." But before I could reply, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. Clara again. This time, not smirking, not gloating. She stood frozen beside Raymond and Leo, her eyes locked on Aiden as if trying to decipher something. Her jaw was tense. Raymond had a hand on Leo's shoulder, but his gaze kept drifting toward me like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Aiden jogged over then, ribbon fluttering against his chest. "Dad, did you see?" "I did," I said, kneeling slightly to be eye level. "You were brilliant." He grinned. "Mr. Carlin said if I keep this up, I might be able to enter the regional fair next year. We'll get started on it next week," I said. "You lead. I follow." That's when Clara approached again. "I didn't know you had a son," she said, too casual, like we were strangers catching up over coffee. She looked at Aiden like she was seeing a crack in a window she thought was shatterproof. I straightened, standing beside Aiden, placing a subtle but firm hand on his shoulder. "You never asked." Aiden looked up at her, then back at me. "Who is she?" I smiled down at him. "Just someone I used to know." Clara's mouth twitched. "He's very bright." "Aiden," I said, "this is Clara. I knew her a long time ago." Aiden, always polite, nodded. "Nice to meet you." His tone was neutral but cool. He had his mother's grace but my intuition. He knew something wasn't quite right. He could feel it. Raymond cleared his throat behind her and stepped forward. "Hey, Mason." His voice was uncertain, carrying none of the bravado he used to wear like armor. That was impressive. "Your boy, he's smart." "Yeah," I said. "He is." Leo hung back. He looked nothing like Aiden. Bigger, yes. Athletic. More polished. But there was a nervous edge to him, a stiffness in how he clung to his father's arm like he wasn't sure what all this meant. Clara shifted uncomfortably. "You never said you had a child." "Back then, you told me that I was infertile," I said quietly. "I was. But it happened. A 1 in a million thing," the doctors said. I met her eyes, let the silence stretch. "Guess I got lucky." Her face flickered. shock, disbelief, envy, maybe even regret. It danced there for a heartbeat before she blinked it away. Sophia joined us then, warm and steady. "Hey, kiddo," she said to Aiden. "Why don't you help Mrs. Finn take the project back to the truck?" "Sure," Aiden said, giving me one last proud look before walking off. Clara's gaze followed him. "He's happy." "Yes," I said. "He is." Raymond's voice cracked the tension. "He looks like you." "Yeah," I said again, quieter this time. "He does." Sophia looked at Clara then, not with judgment, just clarity. She wasn't territorial or bitter. She didn't have to be. She knew the life we had built, knew the weight of the years, the healing, the earned peace. Clara looked like she wanted to say more, maybe ask questions, maybe explain. But the moment had already passed. "Take care," I said simply, offering nothing more. Sophia slipped her hand into mine as we turned toward the door. Her fingers laced between mine like always, easy, natural. I didn't look back, and neither did she. As we stepped into the sunlit parking lot, Aiden was waiting by the truck, his project safe in the back seat. He waved as we approached. "Can we get ice cream?" he asked. "For science." I laughed. "For science?" "Sure." As we pulled out of the school lot, I glanced once in the rearview mirror. Clara stood there, still at the gym doors, small now, like a statue carved from all the wrong things, resentment, pride, unfinished questions. I had nothing left to say to her, because I'd already introduced her to the life she walked away from, the son she'd never know, and the man she never gave a chance to become. It started with a message, a short one, from Kyle, an old mutual friend I hadn't spoken to in years. We used to play poker on Thursdays and argue about which actor made the better bond. "Yo, just a heads up, Raymond's been asking around. About you. About your kid." I read the text 3 times before I responded. "Why?" "Said something about your miracle baby not adding up. Sounds like he's paranoid. Thought you should know." I didn't reply after that. Just stared at the screen for a while, watching the cursor blink, like it was waiting for me to decide what kind of man I wanted to be this time. It was strange. I'd never told anyone about my fertility diagnosis beyond Sophia. I'd never posted about Aiden online. We didn't chase likes. We didn't perform parenthood for an audience. But the science fair had stirred something up. Something old. Something sour. And once rumors start, they breed faster than truth. Within a week, more whispers filtered through town. Friends of friends suddenly acting like we'd re-entered their orbit. An old coworker from my city days randomly followed me on social media again. I even got a message from my old supervisor, just a friendly checking in. None of it felt coincidental. Then, Clara's online presence changed. No more passive-aggressive posts. No more curated pictures of her perfect family. Just generic shares and the occasional quote about growth or starting over. She hadn't posted a picture with Raymond in weeks. And the last one with Leo was from before the fair. Silence doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers loud enough to make your bones ache. I wasn't sure what Raymond thought he'd find digging around. Maybe he assumed I had faked the infertility. Maybe he was scared that Aiden's existence made Clara question her choices. Maybe, and this one stung most, he looked at Aiden and wished he could claim a fraction of him. One afternoon, I ran into Leo at the grocery store. I didn't expect to see him. He was standing near the frozen aisle, comparing 2 brands of waffles like it was a life decision. He noticed me before I could duck away. He looked different up close. Older, yes, but tired in a way most kids his age shouldn't be. Not sad, just heavy-eyed. Like he'd been asked to carry too much of someone else's weight. "Hey," he said. Not sure. Not cold either. Just neutral. "Hey." I nodded. He hesitated, then added, "Your kid's smart." "Thanks," I said. I saw his project. That solar thing. It was cool. He shoved the waffles into his cart without looking. "My mom said you used to be a loser." I raised my eyebrows. That tracks. But she's kinda wrong. Uh-huh. I tilted my head, studying him. "What do you think?" He shrugged. "I think sometimes adults say stuff to make themselves feel better. About the choices they made." That caught me off guard. There was an honesty to it, raw and unfiltered, like most of the truth kids learn to hide over time. "Well," I said carefully, "I was kind of a loser. At least, back then. But I got better." Leo cracked a small grin. "Your kid's cool. Weird, but cool." He gets that from me. There was a pause. One of those long, stretched-out silences where the air feels like it's watching. Then Leo nodded once and walked off, cart rattling behind him. He didn't say goodbye. I stood there for a while, hand on a box of cereal I didn't even want, just thinking. He didn't know it, but Leo had just confirmed what I'd suspected. Something was unraveling in their home. And not because of me, not directly, but because the truth has a way of echoing through the spaces people try hardest to keep airtight. Aiden never knew about the encounter. I didn't tell Sophia either, not right away. There was no need. We had our own lives, our own steady rhythm. But later that night, after Aiden went to bed, I stood on the porch with Sophia, watching the wind stir the tall grass just beyond the fence. She handed me a cup of tea. "You've been quiet." I sipped, then asked, "Do you ever think the past tries to come back just to see if it still has power over you?" She smiled softly. "Only when it's jealous of your present." I turned and kissed her knuckles. "You always say the exact thing I didn't know I needed to hear." She leaned against my shoulder. "That's because I know when you're holding your breath." And just like that, I exhaled. I wasn't afraid of Raymond. I wasn't bitter at Clara. I didn't need their validation, their guilt, or their confusion. But I knew the cracks in their mirror had started to show. And eventually, something would break. I didn't plan to see Raymond again. I figured whatever paranoia he was nursing would fade, or he'd get over it like most men do, with ego and denial. But one Friday afternoon, as I was sipping burnt coffee from the local shop and sketching out blueprints on a napkin, he walked in. I saw him before he saw me. He looked like a man unraveling from the inside, creased khakis, jaw tense, a tiredness in his posture that no gym session or tailored suit could hide. He scanned the place and spotted me by the window. For a second, I thought he might turn and walk out. He didn't. He walked over with the stiff determination of someone trying not to second-guess himself. I didn't stand, didn't greet him, just gestured to the empty chair across from me. He sat, elbows on the table, like he was ready for a cross-examination. The silence between us wasn't heavy, it was taut, like a wire pulled tight between two buildings, waiting to snap. "I need to ask you something," he said finally. I nodded once, then asked. He didn't meet my eyes right away. He looked at the sugar dispenser, at the chip table edge, anywhere but at me. "Is Aiden really yours?" The words didn't sting. Not anymore. They settled over me like dust, familiar, weightless. "Yes," I said simply. Raymond looked up then. His expression was complicated, anger, disbelief, confusion, all clawing for space on his face. But the doctors said. I know what they said. I also know what 3 specialists told me when Sophia got pregnant. That sometimes, the impossible just happens. And in our case, it did. He let out a bitter laugh. "You expect me to believe that? That after everything, after Clara left you, after you basically vanished, you show up with a kid? And he's yours? Just like that?" "No," I replied. "I don't expect you to believe anything. But it's the truth." Raymond rubbed his face with both hands. For a moment, he looked less like the guy who stole my wife and more like someone who had just realized the floor beneath him wasn't stable anymore. "Leo's not mine," he said suddenly. The words hit the table between us like a slammed book. I leaned back slowly. "What?" He didn't look at me, just stared at his own hands like they held all the wrong answers. "We had him tested. For a condition that runs in my family. Long story. But the test came back inconsistent. I pushed for a full DNA panel. And he laughed again, but it was dry. Hollow. He's not mine. Biologically, I mean. I thought maybe they messed up the results. Clara swore up and down he was mine. Said I was being insecure, paranoid. But the numbers don't lie. I didn't say anything. I just let the weight of his confession settle. "I thought you faked the infertility," he said, quieter now. "Thought maybe Clara never told me the full story. But now, I don't know what to think." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The shop bustled around us, people ordering lattes, the hum of a blender, the creak of a door. But our table might as well have existed in a vacuum. Finally, I stirred my coffee and looked at him. "I didn't fake it, Raymond. I was devastated when I got that diagnosis. And when Clara left, I didn't blame her at first. I thought I was broken." He flinched at that. "But then she used it like a weapon. Publicly. Cruelly. And you stood beside her. Married her. Raised her son. All while pretending it didn't come at someone else's expense." His voice came out hoarse. "I didn't know she. I didn't think it mattered. We loved each other. Did you?" He looked at me then. Really looked. "I thought I did." I nodded. "Well, now you know how it feels." That wasn't a jab. It was just the truth, laid bare. The kind of truth you don't have to shout, because it's already echoing inside the person who needs to hear it. He pushed his chair back slowly, like standing up was heavier than it used to be. I don't know what to do, he said quietly. That's not my problem. He paused. Do you hate me? I looked him in the eye. No, I don't have space for that anymore. He nodded, as if that answer hurt more than a punch. Then he left. I sat there for a while after, watching the steam rise from my coffee. Raymond had been plan B. He just didn't realize it until now. And somewhere, Clara's house of cards was finally starting to collapse under the weight of her own lies. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because it was the one day of the week I got to pick Aiden up from school early and take him out for fries and milkshakes at the diner near the pier. He'd aced another science test and was busy explaining black holes to me in rapid-fire detail from the back seat when I saw the figure standing on our front porch. Clara. She looked small. Smaller than I remembered. Not physically, she still wore her heels, still dressed like she belonged in a city ad campaign. But there was something crumpled in the way she held herself. Something quieter. She clutched her purse like it was a lifeline, fingers white-knuckled around the straps. As we pulled into the driveway, she stepped off the porch and into the gravel, unsure if she should stay or flee. Dad, Aiden said, peering out the window. Who's that? I turned off the engine. My hands rested on the steering wheel for a moment too long. Go inside, buddy, I said gently. Mom's home. I'll be in soon. Aiden looked back at her one more time, brows slightly furrowed, then nodded and grabbed his backpack. Sophia opened the door before he reached it, smiling wide like nothing was wrong. She could read a moment from a mile away, and I loved her for how she shielded Aiden without ever making it obvious. Clara waited until the door shut behind them. Then she turned to me. Mason, she said, and just my name carried more weight than it ever should have. I said nothing. I know I shouldn't be here, she began, voice tight, shaking slightly. But I didn't know what else to do. Her lipstick was smudged at one corner. Her eyes looked raw. And I realized, for the first time in over a decade, I was looking at a version of Clara who had nothing left to manipulate. No performance. Just the mess underneath. Talk, I said, flat. She took a breath, like diving into deep water. I made a mistake. I know you probably don't believe I'm capable of saying that, but I have to say it. Everything with Raymond, Leo, I thought I was building a future, but I was just filling a void. And now it's all broken, I finished. She nodded, quickly. Raymond left. Not officially, but emotionally, he's gone. He barely speaks to me. He's moved into the guest room. Leo barely looks me in the eye. And now with the test results, her voice cracked, and she looked down. Everything I built was a lie. And I did it. I created that. I crossed my arms, let the silence hang until she squirmed in it. So why are you here, Clara? I asked. Regret doesn't equal permission. She looked up, a shining now. I want to see Aiden. Just once. Please. I just need to know him. To hear his voice. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did to you. But he's a part of you, and no. She blinked. What? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. I just repeated it. No. You don't get to walk in after 10 years and ask to meet the boy I raised without you. The boy you mocked by implication every time you posted about real fathers and real families. You made it perfectly clear I wasn't enough for you. So you don't get to ask now. Tears welled in her eyes, and she didn't try to hide them this time. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was just so angry and disappointed, and Stop, I said. This isn't about me anymore. It's about him. You don't get to add confusion to his life because your house of mirrors finally cracked. She reached for me, just a step, hands trembling. Mason, please. I'm not asking to take anything from you. Just to sit with him. Just once. And say what? I snapped. That you're his dad's ex-wife? That you left me for my best friend, and now that it fell apart, you want to peek into the life you could have had. She sobbed then, actually sobbed, and I should have felt something. Sympathy. Anger. Satisfaction. But I didn't. I just felt tired. You gave up that right 10 years ago, I said. He has a mother. He has me. He is loved. He is whole. You don't get to interrupt that because your world fell apart. Clara covered her face and shook with silent weeping. I walked past her, up the steps, and paused at the door. If you ever cared about me at all, even once, don't come back. She didn't follow, didn't call out. She just stood there, weeping alone in the gravel driveway, while I went inside. Aiden was laughing with Sophia over a game of chess. The house smelled like cinnamon rolls and safety. I shut the door behind me. The light filtered through the living room windows like it always did on a Sunday, soft, golden, warm enough to stretch across the floor and wrap around our bare feet. Aiden was in the yard, running circles with the dog we adopted last year, a mutt with a limp and a heart too big for his own good. He laughed as he ran, his sneakers kicking up little clouds of dust, his joy loud and unfiltered. Sophia came out from the kitchen, her hands still damp from washing dishes, her hair tied back in a way that always made her look like a sunbeam had decided to take human form. She walked over and sat beside me on the porch swing, sighing in that contented way you only do when your life has finally stopped hurting. I didn't say anything for a while. We just watched Aiden, the wind tugging at the hem of his shirt, the sky stretching wide and merciful above him. Sophia reached for my hand. He's happy. He is, I said. I still don't know how we got so lucky. You didn't get lucky, she said. You healed. You opened. You gave him a place to grow. I nodded, but the truth still sat heavy in my chest. Clara hadn't returned. Not once since that day in the driveway. Not a phone call, not a letter, not a second plea. Maybe she understood now. Maybe she finally realized that walking away has consequences that can't be undone with tears. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her ill. But I didn't mourn her anymore either. That chapter was closed, and I didn't plan on reopening it, even to peek. Raymond? He'd sent a short message a few weeks after our coffee shop conversation. No apology, just a sentence. You were right. I wasn't plan A. That was all. I didn't reply. I looked over at Sophia then. You think he'll ever ask? About her. She didn't pretend not to know who I meant. Maybe, she said. And when he does, we'll tell him the truth, but only the parts that matter. The rest? That belongs to us. I squeezed her hand gently. You've given me more than I ever thought I'd have. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You gave it to yourself. I just came along when you were ready to share it. It wasn't about revenge. It hadn't been for a long time. There was a time when I imagined this exact moment. My ex on her knees, begging, my former best friend realizing he lost everything, and me standing tall with the last word. But now, the silence was louder than any speech. The absence of their voices in our lives was the loudest victory of all, because I had everything they tried to replace. I had Aiden, his mind a universe of curiosity, his heart wide open and full of wonder. I had Sophia, who never needed my past cleaned up to love me fully. And I had myself, rebuilt from the ground up, piece by quiet piece. The porch swing creaked softly as we rocked. Aiden darted back to us, breathless and flushed, carrying something in his hands. Dad, look, he shouted, holding up a piece of driftwood shaped like a lightning bolt. It looks like Thor's hammer got fried. Sophia laughed. Only you would find Norse mythology in beach junk. He handed it to me proudly, as if it were treasure. I took it with both hands. Let's keep it, I said. It's from this day. A good day. He grinned and collapsed between us on the swing, still catching his breath. I wrapped one arm around his shoulders and the other around Sophia's. And we sat like that, the three of us, tucked into each other while the wind played in the trees and the sun made golden paths across the yard. No cameras, no audience, no captions needed. Just love, honest and full. I thought back to the man I was at 30, sitting in that sterile doctor's office, hearing words that sounded like a life sentence. Infertile, low motility, slim chance. I thought it meant I'd never be enough, that I'd never be a husband worth keeping, that I'd never be a father, never be whole. But here I was. Whole didn't look like perfection. It looked like Sunday swings and driftwood treasures. It looked like burnt cinnamon rolls and bedtime chess games and laughter that echoed off porch rails. Sometimes, I said aloud, more to myself than anyone else, being thrown away is the best gift life can give you. Sophia glanced up. You weren't thrown away. You were set free. I looked at her, then at Aiden, who had already started sketching the driftwood in a small notepad he carried everywhere. She was right. They didn't break me. They unburdened me. And in the silence they left behind, I built something better than revenge. I built a life, a family, a future.